Hello, my name is Rihanna Anderson, and I'm an assistant professor at the University of Michigan School of Public Health in the Health Behavior and Health Education Department. I'm really excited to talk with you today about Embrace, developing a racial socialization intervention to reduce racial stress and enhance racial coping among Black parents and adolescents. I'd especially like to thank my co-authors Monique McKinney and Dr. Howard Stevenson in the development of this paper. So what do we talk about in this paper? Well, the first thing is racial discrimination and its negative impact on Black adolescents and Black adults. The literature is really replete with how negative psychological outcomes are associated with discrimination, even in children. And so the question is, well, what can we do about some of the racial stress and trauma that manifest from this discrimination? Racial socialization is a cultural strength that African American families in particular use to combat some of the negative associations between discrimination and these psychological outcomes. So what is racial socialization, you might ask? Well, socialization generally is the way in which we socialize people or children in this case to the environment around them. Racial socialization in particular is how we think about and make meaning of race. So in particular with racial socialization, there are often four content areas. Cultural socialization or pride messaging is around how we inculcate our youth with positive messages about their culture. Preparation for bias is another step in which there's a realistic expectation that bias may be present in the environment and ways to prepare for that bias, such as putting hands on a steering wheel and visible to authorities, things of that sort. Another strategy is promotion of distrust, in which parents may pass down messaging of generalization of all of these types of people might be out to get you, or it's not safe to go in this type of environment. So it's a really generalized approach of distrusting other people. And finally, egalitarianism, which is the way that we think about all groups being equal despite race. So racial socialization, comprising those four different content areas, is one way in which African American parents in particular protect their children from the racial discrimination that's impacting them. One theory that's coming out soon, the recast theory, racial encounter coping appraisal socialization theory, is a way in which racial socialization acts as a moderator of some of the relationships between racial discrimination and outcomes, in particular self-efficacy. So what are the ways in which socialization actually boosts the efficacy of children and parents when they're having these racial conversations? If you're essentially practicing the ways in which discrimination may impact you and the ways to cope with it more effectively, racial socialization is then theorized to boost the efficacy that children and parents have, which can then lead to greater coping behaviors and better psychological outcomes. So with that in mind, racial discrimination, racial socialization, and this theorization of how these constructs go together, we wanted to develop an intervention that therapists and practitioners could use to increase the self-efficacy through these racial socialization strategies. And that intervention is Embrace, engaging, managing, and bonding through race. Within this article, you're going to find some really great resources about Embrace, including its development, things that we do to train our clinicians, an overview and session content, and even a sample session. But generally speaking, Embrace is a 5-session intervention that works with Black families to process some of these issues of racial discrimination through racial socialization methods. It's a strengths-based process that can really help therapists and clients talk about some of these problems that Black families in particular may present. It's useful to the field of family therapy because therapists should be competent in working with all clients and able to address the common presenting problems that come through the door. We imagine that for Black families, racial stress and trauma are common issues that may not be addressed within the therapeutic realm. So we want to not only help families to process some of this stress, but also prepare therapists better as well. finally, in thinking about if you're an instructor, how can you use this in the classroom? Again, we have real world examples. We also have sample sessions, and so there are lots of hands-on and tangible ways to use this article to address some of these issues within your classroom, in particular for vignette or role play. Thank you so much, and we look forward to your feedback. Please email me, Rihanna E, at umich.edu if you have any questions or comments.